And now, Eyewitness News NightBEAT.
Good evening. Peace of mind for breast cancer victims.
That's what state senators say they have given women across Connecticut tonight, passing a bill in just the past hour that outlaws so-called drive-through mastectomies. Now, this is the latest in a series of votes as this year's legislative session winds down. NightBEAT reporter Dennis House is live at the state capitol with the latest. Dennis?
Al, good evening. Behind me, you see all the people who voted against this bill. Absolutely no one. This bill passed unanimously, and the bill would get rid of what are called drive-through mastectomies, and those are breast cancer surgeries in which a woman doesn't stay overnight, and insurance companies don't have to pay for them to stay overnight. Well, one Connecticut woman called it barbaric and said something had to change.
It is our pleasure to introduce to this chamber one of the gutsiest women, I think, in this country.
She took center stage after the Senate passed a bill she had been championing for years, an end to drive-through mastectomies.
I don't deserve the credit. I'm simply the voice and opened the door to your constituents. The people of the state of Connecticut deserve the credit, and those of you who had the sensitivity to listen and the courage to act.
Dr. Kristen Zarfos, a surgeon at Middlesex Hospital, has been fighting for a law that would require insurance companies to pay for women to be hospitalized for 2 days after a mastectomy. Her crusade even caught the attention of President Clinton and the First Lady. Tonight's Senate vote was unanimous and came after emotional testimony from lawmakers.
I think tonight of a night not that many years ago when I also stood in this circle to receive the news that caused me to leave abruptly to go to Hartford Hospital, where my brother's wife was unfortunately in the process of passing away from breast cancer.
Having a daughter-in-law who has gone through this, I know just what Senator Peters says. There's a lot of emotion, there's nervousness, and everything else.
For Kristen Zarfos, she says this is a victory for all women and the men who love them.
I'm very excited. My husband and son are here, and you have to understand they've done as much for this as I have, so it's a great family night for us, and it's unbelievable.
By the way, this is not the same mastectomy bill that you've read about in the newspapers or heard here on Channel 3. There was a revision to this bill, an amendment which would also require insurance companies to pay for reconstructive surgery after the mastectomy, and that, of course, also passed unanimously. The bill now goes on to the House for approval and to Governor Rowland, who at this point, we don't know if he'll sign it into law. I did ask his press secretary tonight. He said he's not sure about this current bill. The governor has not seen the amendments yet. Al, back to you.
All right, Dennis House live at the Capitol. Also happening at the state capitol tonight, baby selling will soon be a crime in Connecticut. Lawmakers unanimously passing and sending to the governor a bill that was prompted by that case involving a Torrington infant. Also, police will be allowed to notify schools if a student is arrested, even if school is not in session when the student is arrested. And the House has voted to increase penalties against criminals who take advantage of people above age 60 or the blind and disabled.
It has happened again. A second time in 2 days, a small child is partially impaled on a sharp object. This time in Branford, but it could have been a lot worse. NightBEAT reporter Tracy Martinez is here with details. Tracy.
Donna, 8-year-old Jeremy Allendorf fell on a metal pole. It was embedded in his leg and he couldn't move, but thanks to some quick-thinking young friends, the boy escaped with minor injuries.
It's dark and scary, but kids at the Branford Hills apartment sometimes play in the building's basements, even though they're supposed to be locked. Unfortunately, one 8-year-old boy and his friends learned the hard way why it's just not safe.
Me and him were in the basement. Well, we were looking for, like, water guns, and he was getting up on some boxes looking for some, and he slipped and fell. And last thing I just heard him cry, so I ran in there.
And 10-year-old Logan McCormick found his best friend, Jeremy Allendorf, lying partially impaled on a metal pole. The pole still attached to a heavy dresser. Logan McCormick knew he had to get help immediately, so for a few terrifying moments, he had to leave his friend alone here in the basement with the pole still in his leg. He called for help and returned with an array of friends and neighbors.
He was asking us, he's going, Jen, please help me. And Jen's like, well, I can't help him because if I move him or do something, it might hit an artery and then it's all over.
Firefighter paramedic Tom Mahoney responded to what had now become a neighborhood rescue.
All his friends were standing outside waving us in.
Paramedics removed the object and took him to the hospital with nothing more than a flesh wound, thanks to his quick-thinking friends.
I was real proud of them when I came home and they were telling me the story. I was, oh my God, I don't know if I could have done as well.
Absolutely. They did the right thing. The only thing is maybe next time not to play in the cellar.
It's a tough way to learn a lesson, but the message definitely got across. Jeremy Allendorf is back home resting tonight with only 6 stitches, and tomorrow he goes back to school.
With quite a story to tell.
That's right.
Absolutely. All right, thanks, Tracy. Meantime, a Waterbury boy continues to recover after being impaled by part of a trampoline. Rescuers had to use a blowtorch to remove part of the iron before they could safely take 11-year-old Nick Hearn away. Hearn was taken to St. Mary's Hospital, where doctors removed the object from the boy's leg without surgery.
A judge stirs outrage by dismissing an assault charge against a Springfield police officer who was caught on videotape kicking a suspect while he was on the ground being handcuffed. The judge says it was reasonable force under the circumstances, but the district attorney is now considering pursuing the case through a grand jury investigation.
The state resting its case today on the Alex Kelly rape retrial. Prosecutors leaving the jury with the image of Kelly failing to show up for his 1987 trial. A court clerk reading the transcript noting that Kelly didn't show up, his bond was forfeited, and his rearrest ordered while he lived in Europe as a fugitive. The Kelly defense is expected to start its case tomorrow morning. Eyewitness News will provide continuing coverage.
The latest now on last evening's killer tornadoes in Texas. Rescuers spending the day today in muddy fields looking for the 23 people still missing. The death toll tonight stands at 27. Governor George Bush declares a disaster area, the region hardest hit, around the town of Gerald. CBS correspondent Lee Cohen is there and has this report.
Well, the search has ended here tonight for the 23 people still listed as missing from a series of tornadoes that ripped through the central Texas area yesterday, literally taking one neighborhood completely off the map. The search will resume tomorrow, but hope is beginning to wane that they're going to find any of those people alive. If they don't, this could turn out to be the worst storm in Texas history. It took just about a half an hour to erase an entire neighborhood, a subdivision, home to about 50 central Texas residents, blown into oblivion by 200-mile-an-hour winds. The aftermath, a muddy and ghostly barren landscape. Rescuers are still searching for anyone who may have beat the odds and survived. More than 24 didn't, and nearly 24 more are still missing.
The base of it was like a mile long. It took everything out, everything. Destroyed people's lives.
The winds were strong enough to peel away asphalt from roadbeds. The only reminders that this was a residential street are the concrete foundations of homes. All worldly possessions once inside, now scattered miles and miles away.
The area where it looks like the center of the tornado hit covers probably a half a mile and covers about a mile long. And I don't know the distance of it, but debris north of there and also back west of there covers a large area, and I don't know how many miles it covers.
Texas Governor George W. Bush toured the devastation by air and by ground. He says he'll now ask the federal government for help in rebuilding this bedroom community of 1,000 people just north of Austin.
Oh, God, please make it go away.
The twister that devastated this town of Gerald was just one of more than half a dozen funnel clouds spawned by a huge storm system, the deadliest since 1989. And despite early warnings, no place was safe from this. Damage here is estimated at $20 million so far. Help is pouring into Red Cross facilities from all around Texas and all around the nation as well. It's a good thing because many of these residents here in Gerald have nothing to return to but their foundations. In Gerald, Texas, Lee Cowan, Channel 3, Eyewitness News, NightBEAT.
Thanks, Lee, and keep it right here on 3 tonight. We'll have more coverage of these killer tornadoes. We're going to take you live back to Gerald, Texas, coming up on the NightBEAT.
Wicked weather striking other parts of the country. First up, the Daytona Beach area where power outages were widespread. Just one of the problems as heavy winds, rain, and lightning rumbled through. Flooding is another. The damage so severe in some parts, one woman actually opened her back door to find a tree blocking the exit.
Up in Jacksonville, Florida, heavy rains and damaging winds left streets blocked, power lines down. Lightning touched off a house fire that kept firefighters busy. No serious injuries were reported, though. While damage was widespread, the debris caused headaches for drivers, and many homes were reduced to piles of rubble.
And in Denver, hail covered the ground as this wild weather moved into the mile-high city. 2 to 3 inches of the stuff was left on the ground, while a band of small tornadoes also raced through that area. The twisters didn't do a lot of damage, but they did provide a spectacular visual display. And now on to Hilton and a first look at Connecticut's most accurate forecast. Good evening, Hilton.
Good evening, Donna. We've also been tracking more tornadoes tonight in Texas, and we'll update you on where they are in just a few minutes. But for us, a quiet night, but not as cold as it was last night. Overnight lows in the mid-40s. When you wake up in the morning, it'll be more seasonable. Not quite warm as it should be, but temperatures nevertheless in the 40s to near 50 when your alarm goes off. Warm, mid-70s midday tomorrow, and a pleasant evening with temperatures in the 70s, but high clouds will begin to thin out and filter that sunshine during the day tomorrow. Our complete forecast, plus more live continuing coverage from Texas in just a few minutes, folks.
All right, Hilton, the Oklahoma City bombing trial might soon be over. By the weekend, jurors are expected to be deliberating the fate of defendant Timothy McVeigh. Here's the latest. The defense rested its case today after calling 25 witnesses in just 3.5 days. Prosecutors then called 3 witnesses in rebuttal, including an FBI chemist who says there's no evidence that the box in the FBI lab that held McVeigh's clothing was contaminated with explosives residue. Closing arguments are set for tomorrow morning in Denver. Another important trial coming to a close. A New Jersey jury begins deliberations tomorrow in the case that spawned Megan's laws all across the country. Those are the laws that require community notification whenever sex offenders move in. Jesse Temendiqua is accused of killing 7-year-old Megan Kanka. She lived across the street from him.
The Air Force suffering its first fatal crash involving a female pilot. Air Force Captain Amy Lynn Svoboda crashed her A-10 near Gila Bend, Arizona last night. Searchers located the wreckage today. She was one of just 6 women flying the A-10 and one of 14 women flying Air Force fighter jets. Women were allowed to join the fighter pilot ranks in 1993. Also making news around America tonight, people return home from vacation to find 5 relatives dead. Authorities say of carbon monoxide poisoning. 2 of the victims were adults, 3 are described as young people. Maryland police saying a car engine was apparently left running in the garage. The investigation now focuses on whether the deaths were accidental.
1 California police officer is killed, 2 others injured when bullets fly at an L.A. area warehouse where a shooting suspect had barricaded himself. The suspect first started firing when authorities tried to serve an arrest warrant in a murder investigation. Other officers responded to their call for help, and those officers were also wounded.
O.J. Simpson's lawyer taking the first step in challenging the civil jury decision, filing a notice of appeal today. The decision holds Simpson liable for killing his ex-wife and her friend and awards damages of $33.5 million to their families. The 3-paragraph document simply says Simpson is appealing the judgment. A lawyer for the plaintiff says he expects the judgment to be upheld.
Of course, O.J. Simpson is not the first celebrity to have found himself in trouble with the law. In fact, tonight, 2 popular TV personalities face possible jail time. Both mugshots released today. Stick with us. We're going to give you a closer look.
On a more serious note, a fungal infection is threatening singer Bob Dylan's heart. We'll have the latest on his medical situation.
And you witnessed her life-saving surgery right here on the Night Beat. Tonight, this New England girl is taking a giant step forward. The Night Beat is coming right back.
Channel 3 Eyewitness News. This is Connecticut's news station.